So again, guys, welcome to Senior Marketing Specialist and Senior Marketing Specialist University presenting a guide to hosting Medicare events. Typically, this is, we do a webinar like this similar every single year. And honestly, it's because I'm incredibly biased towards events. Speaking events, kiosks, client appreciation events, the more they are, I truly believe that any type of event that you host is like the only true way of doing both marketing and prospecting.
Sure.
It's an event that helps you build your brand recognition, get people familiar with you, have you be kind of like the solution, is what I like to say, but also helps you like get more business. And that's really kind of far and few in between as far as what true marketing systems can do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So the reason why we want to talk about it specifically this year is because, as we know, some significant changes coming in compliance starting September 30th that does affect how effective how effective, did I say that wrong? Is it both affect how effective your events can be? Because at the end of the day, though this is really awesome at building your book of business, building your brand name, if you don't make money and take applications, then you're wasting time, wasting resources, and not making money, which is at the end of the day what we're here to do. So this is what we're talking about today, focusing on how to make the most out of each one of your events and kind of the differences between what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Sadie designed this beautiful little tree here. I love it. And it's, there are. Perfect.
Oh, yeah.
So there are 3 types of events. Okay. Now, some of these are like actual definitions that we did not come up with. Marketing event is a little concoction of our own creation. It's going to make sense here in a little bit. So in the eyes of CMS, remember we're talking about compliance today. In the eyes of CMS, there are 2 types of events. There are sales events, which include formal and informal, and then there are educational events. I say that between sales events and educational events, CMS is highly involved in both of them. They actually come with a lot of rules, regulations, dollar amounts that you can spend, what you can say, what you can do. There's a lot of rules associated with those 2. Marketing events is something that we came up with. And the reason why marketing events is not going to be dictated, ran by, looked at, smelled by CMS is because in a marketing event, in no way, shape, or form are you discussing Medicare Advantage or prescription drug plans. Now, it's going to become apparent throughout the presentation. Marketing events are my favorite. I think you can make the most profit, most bang for your buck, get the most clientele out of a marketing event. But I do still feel like in both sales and educational event, there is, even with the upcoming changes, there are reasons why they do exist and should exist in the field.
Yes, absolutely. So whenever you're coming to decide, okay, I want to do events, first thing that you need to be thinking about is what sort of information, where, what kind, am I wanting to do a seminar, am I wanting to do a kiosk sort of thing. And then you have to decide, what are you going to be talking about? Because you can't just decide to do a seminar, show up and talk about anything you want, obviously. So that's first step, and we'll break them down in the slides.
Yeah. I think too, you have to kind of decide like, what do you want your call to action to be?
Yeah.
Because your marketing event, you can have whatever call to action you want. On sales and educational events, because they are CMS regulated, your call to actions are getting to be slim to none with the upcoming changes. So let's start off let's go into details on what is a sales event. So a sales event is broken up into, let's just go back really quick. A sales event is broken up into 2 portions, a formal and informal sales event. What we mean when we say a CMS sales event is one in which you are required to talk about at least one specific product, and it has to be with a specific carrier. So if you're doing a sales event, you are discussing United Healthcare's HMO Plan 1, and that you can only discuss unless you register it. And with those sales events, they have to be registered through that carrier. So if you want to talk about be able to represent multiple carriers, then you have to register that event through multiple carriers, and you get less support from the carriers from that, because why would they want to help you, support another carrier?
Correct.
So when you're talking about a sales event, sales means that you are talking specifically about a carrier and about a product within that carrier. And Mary, I think tuxedo optional.
Yeah.
I've seen tuxedo t-shirts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's dig into what a formal sales event is. A formal sales event is one that is, I would say, take the tuxedo route. A formal sales event is audience to presenter. You are standing in
Like
front of
classroom style.
That's exactly right. Classroom style. A formal sales event is a classroom style presentation. Now, at a formal sales event, you do have to go through almost an entirely like compliant sales presentation. You have to go through the summary of benefits. You have to go through the co-pays. You have to go through everything that you do in a formal sales presentation on a one-on-one, but you're just doing it on a mass basis.
Right.
So when do I really see it that it's worth doing a sales event? I really, if in an area that like it's the obvious choice.
Right.
And this is more like SEP, January 1st through October 1st time of year. If there's just like, this is a Medicare Advantage plan that is just going to dominate, the benefits are crazy, there's no competition, I do think it's worth doing a formal sales event because you're only tying yourself to that one plan. You're not harming yourself by not representing other plans there.
Absolutely, for sure. And also you'll be able to kind of, there's pros and cons with representing one carrier. On one side, it's you're limited to just that one carrier. It's not as much of your brand building as much it is you just educating on that. But then on the actual carrier and the product. But then on the other hand, it's nice because this is also a way, if you're working with a single carrier or something like that, you're able to work directly with your carrier reps. You're able to get resources from the carrier. You're able to kind of build that sort of relationship.
And credibility.
And credibility. Yeah, correct.
Another time where I see the kind of classroom style formal sales event be a good idea is actually one that like everyone should do. If you have a book of business, more than 10 people, and 5 of those people are on a Medicare Advantage plan. I don't know why I'm getting specific with numbers. The numbers aren't important. If you have Medicare Advantage clients, we strongly recommend that you do ANOC meetings. ANOC meetings are annual notices of change. And what you do with these meetings is that during the first 2 weeks of AEP, whenever the clients receive their ANOC letters they get at the end of September, you have a presentation where you go through, okay, if you're on this plan, this is what your plan's going to look like in 2024. Here's where the increases of benefits are happening. Here's where the increases of premium or decreases of benefits. So it's one that they get anyways, but I love the ANOC plans because one, if you're worried about like, am I going to have to move an entire book of business over, you knock out of a lot of questions and you knock out a lot of appointments in one go, which is super nice. So that's one reason I really like them. The other reason why I really like them is that they can be great opportunities for you to get new clients because you invite your clients to say, if you have any other friends or family members that are on this plan, have them come to this meeting as well.
Yes.
And again, they're registered, you're going through it, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And then you can even take appointments and applications at the end of that appointment.
Absolutely. We see a lot of success in some of our top agencies. We see that they do this, and we've even created some virtual formats and stuff for them as well. And they're a very, these feel to me like the least quote unquote scary formal sales events.
Yeah,
because it's so straightforward. You know exactly what you're talking about. You know that the questions are going to be retaining to this. And again, you're able to knock out a ton of different people all at once. That sounds, well, you know, knock out appointments all at once.
We're not
bullying.
It's
okay?
not that kind of event.
Yeah, it's not that kind of event. But now I forgot my thought. But anyway,
You went to bowling.
ANOC video.
Like,
ANOC
PTSD
meetings. Really great. Yes.
So let's go over some of the pros. Why, again, we kind of already talked about this. When it comes to any time of formal or informal, if it's a true sales event and is registered as such, you can take applications at the time of the appointment. You don't have to have a separate appointment. You don't have to wait till later. At the end of your presentation, if they say, yes, I want that plan that you're talking about, you can take an application right then and there. You don't need to have, you can use the scope of appointment. You don't have to have the 48-hour rule for that because they're considered walk-ins. Really makes that simple. Discuss the plan by detail. So there's no, like, at that point, like, people know exactly what they're there for. You're not having to sell a plan. They're saying, I want the plan that you talked about. You can set appointments at these. You do have the ability, even if you don't want to take the application right then and there because, you know, maybe there's more discussion to be had, you can actually set an appointment at a sales event. You can't do that at an educational event anymore, okay? So you can set appointments. And like we mentioned earlier, it does build that credibility because even if I don't know Sadie, if I've never met Sadie before, she doesn't have any of my trust. However, United Healthcare, Aetna, Humana, that's a big brand that I'm very familiar with. So some of that inherent trust, she represents them. So some of that trust that comes with that brand gets translated over to Sadie. So it does build that credibility as well.
It shows that, like, as just an insurance advisor in general, that you're doing advising. You're not
Yes.
just signing them up for
That's a great
plans.
point.
You're going out into the community. You're taking the time to get in front of
Yep.
people, rain or shine, and you are able to
mailman.
show them, yes, you're able to give as much information, take all the questions, go above and beyond,
Yeah.
which I think in general, actually, right after this, I'm going to be shooting a video for our YouTube page
Very
called Ways to
cool.
be Better than Google. And this is one of
Love
those ways
that.
where, like, in an age of convenience, people want the information, they want it now, they want to be able to get it now.
Yeah.
These are going to be the sorts of things that really set you apart
Mm-hmm.
from, and this is really all events, I think, but setting you apart from being able to just do it online or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Like it is a big benefit to being your client or a client of.
For sure. Some of the cons of doing formal sales events, again, you really are restricted by compliance. You can only represent that one carrier. It is likely because you do have to register it with the carrier. Reminder, United Healthcare has an extra certification you need to do to host events with them. But because you are making it known, it is likely you're going to be secret shopped. It is likely that there's going to be audits done on that. So you have to be careful with that. So it's just whenever, it's a CMS event, so CMS is going to be involved in it. The second type of sales event is going to be the informal sales event. The informal sales event is what you notice, like there are like the pharmacies, the kiosks that you see, like what everybody's talking about, like the Walmart kiosks. Those are informal sales events. Anytime that you are set up with the intention on taking applications for Part C and Part D. If you're set up at a booth, you want to waive, you want to have more walk-ins, you want to waive that 48-hour scope appointment, you're setting up at a kiosk, that needs to be an informal sales event. Now, when you're doing an informal sales event, I honestly am not the biggest fans of them. There are a couple situations to where they do make sense to do an informal sales event. If you are an agent that is maybe new to the industry and looking for opportunities, so maybe you don't have a ton of funds or money to invest into your marketing plan, but you do have a lot of time. These informal sales events, you have to sign up for so many hours per week to do these a lot of times. And then, like, if you have anything that like last minute cancellations and you can't go to that booth, or maybe you're 2 weeks in and you're like, I'm not getting any business from this, I'm not going to waste any more time.
Right.
You're stuck.
Yeah.
CMS is saying that you have to cancel usually within 7 days in advance, and oftentimes you have to find your own replacement for that kiosk. So it is a huge time commitment, and oftentimes people don't really see the returns on it that they like. But if you're new and you don't have the funds, you have the time, it is at least some sort of marketing activity for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're getting out there, you're creating new partnerships with like these, you're networking with those pharmacies and stuff like that. So on a business side, it's great. Then also you're just getting your face out in the community. You're getting literally right in front of people where they're already at. They come to you rather than you having to go to them.
Also, keep in mind, I love informal sales events for the D-SNP market, because we do the D-SNP, the dual eligibles, they do require a little bit of different marketing than what the normal or your other clientele might be. With the D-SNP market, you really do have to be where they're at a time that they're ready to buy. There's not a lot of opportunity for follow-up appointments or to get them to your office later. So I really like them from people who are setting up in like low-income areas, low-income housing areas, or like food banks. We have a lot of people that do there, and they do see a lot of success there. So those are kind of the two times where I really see that like it is worth it to do an informal sales event and have it, again, these have to be registered with CMS. Some of the pros we talk about with them, that is you can do it in high traffic areas. You can kind of help you build. The only thing is building the relationship kind of gets a little weird, because if you're going to some place like Walgreens, UHC is doing a bunch of Walgreens pharmacies. Obviously, we know with Humana and the Walmart agreements, oftentimes the people at those organizations are not thrilled to have you there, because you being there actually takes up their retail space.
Sure.
And so oftentimes, like, in those big, if you're not doing it with a mom and pop pharmacy and like a local organization, sometimes you're not going to get the interaction that you want from it.
Right.
Also, keep in mind some regulation and rules with informal sales events. You have to sit at your booth. You can't even, like, if somebody walks by, if they don't say hi to you first, you can't say hi to them. You can't go into the store and bring people into your booth. You have to sit there and only speak when spoken to. So even within these events, you are pretty handcuffed about like what you can even do while you're there. But again, you can take applications and they're considered walk-in, so it waives the 48-hour rule for the scope of appointment. So that's why it's nice for the D-SNP market especially. Some of the cons we've already talked about: incredibly regulated, and can be a huge time commitment, especially so people who have a book of business. You're maybe looking to grow your book of business, not starting from 0, trying to get to 10. A lot of people get really frustrated with that because they don't have time to meet with their current clients because they're worried about being with this booth.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. This is a time commitment, but you kind of have to consider with all of your resources, with all the time, where you're at in your business, is it worth playing the long game with this, or is it worth just shutting it down for now? Because a lot of times things like this, it's playing the long game with it. It's with people seeing you every time they go to Walmart. It's over and over and over again.
Keep in mind, because to your point though, with that, you're not branding yourself at any of these events.
That's
with
very
either
true.
the formal or informal sales event, you are representing a carrier there.
Yes, that's
so like you're not coming in with like Olivia Richardson Insurance. You're coming in with the United Healthcare sign, the United Healthcare banner. So you are like, your face becomes more recognizable, but your name and your brand is not.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, so keep that in mind. So again, we went over formal sales events, informal sales events. The biggest differentiation between those events is that they have to be registered with a carrier. You have to talk about plan benefits with them, and they come with a lot more rules and regulations, but you can take applications.
Yeah.
Next, let's kind of jump into educational events. And educational events is what we're seeing are getting the biggest overhaul when it comes to compliance updates going into 2024 AEP. So what is an educational event? An educational event is traditionally, it doesn't have to be, but an educational event is traditionally another classroom style of presenting, presenter audience feel. However, what makes it different from a formal sales event is that you cannot discuss plan specifics at all. So you can't bring up carrier names. You can't bring up plan names. You can't say, well, some plans will offer you a $3,000 dental benefit. You can't talk about any specifics. So you'll see educational events be more tied to things like Medicare 101s. Medicare or prescription drug plans 101s, Medicare Advantage plans 101s. And that's kind of where we see them be more popular, to do those kind of educational, like what is Medicare, when you're not wanting to talk plans.
Right.
The thing is to consider with this is that educational events do not have to be registered, which is interesting. They are not, you don't have to go and register them through a carrier because you're not discussing carrier benefits, but they are still CMS regulated. So if you're advertising your educational events and you're advertising this stuff, it is still likely that you will be secret shopped, because educational events, you're discussing C&D, they still are ran by CMS, and you do still have some significant rules to worry about with that.
Educational events is the one that this year kind of keeps tripping me up. There are things that there are changes with it, more changes with it. And even though they don't have the carrier aspect, so maybe that's one level of secret shopping or one level less of like rules and regulations that you have to follow. I personally feel like this one might trip up people more because of the slight differences that were changed there. And also people aren't used to being secret shopped by CMS very much anymore. Years.
They've completely, in 2019, CMS actually eliminated the secret shopping program completely, and of course brought it back in 2021. So then they're out with full force. And so not only going to get secret shopped by the CMS, but like when you do registered events, you'll also be secret shopped by the carriers as well.
Yeah.
So to kind of go back on that, some pros on educational events. Number one, these can be advertised as educational events. A sales event, you can't say, if you're doing a registered sales event, you can't advertise and say like, come learn about Medicare. No, if you're going to advertise a sales event, you have to say, come learn about United Healthcare's HMO Plan 1. So these you can advertise about, like learn about Medicare 101. These are also great for turning 65. It's about the only marketing that I really recommend to go to the turning 65 market, because they're the people who are like hungry for data, hungry for information. So it does attract people in that case. And again, like you don't have to register them with a carrier, which is really, really nice. It kind of takes away some of the rules of like when you have to be there, when can you cancel it, so on and so forth. However, the biggest con to this is actually what's new this year, is that educational events will now allow you to have little to no follow-up or call to action anymore. Up until the end of September 30th, not 31st, which I find weird, but up until September 30th, right now at an educational event, you can set appointments, pass out cards, get information. You can do all of that stuff. Starting September 31st, you cannot collect scope of appointments. You cannot set appointments. The only call to action you are allowed to have at an educational event is to collect permission to contacts. You can't even pass out your business cards. You have to be asked for your business card to pass it out or have them available. So really, like, educational events, they've turned into almost pure marketing. They build your name, they build your credibility, they build like your familiarity, which is perfect, but there's very little that you can do to actually get appointments out of it.
For anybody who's new here, could you explain the main reasoning for a permission to contact form versus a scope of appointment?
So the differences between the two. So what a permission to contact form is exactly what that is. We know with compliance and CMS, you are not allowed to a person who a prospect, which means they do not have a product with you, you are not allowed to bring up the conversation with them about Medicare Advantage or prescription drug plan without their permission, right?
Yes.
And if they're not a current client of yours, if you reach out to them proactively about Part C or Part D, that is soliciting and that is not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you come across somebody that's like, hey, maybe I'm on a plan right now, I can't do anything, but I want you to call me during AEP. I would love for you to reach out to me. You say, perfect. Because you're not a current client of mine, I need you to give me written consent to proactively reach out to you concerning Medicare Advantage or prescription drug plans.
Or like referrals, something like where they're not with you yet.
They're not, if they're not a current client. Now, if they are a current client, it doesn't matter what product they have with you. If they're a current client of yours of some sort, you don't need the permission to contact. These are just for people who do not have an active policy with you. A scope of appointment is basically the written permission that a person gives you to discuss CMS sponsored plans. Doesn't matter if they're a current client, doesn't matter if they're a prospect, you need a scope of appointment every single time you are discussing Medicare Advantage or prescription drug plans at length on a one-on-one basis. Starting September 30th, you have to have those scope of appointments 48 hours prior to the appointment, with the only exceptions being walk-ins or inbound phone calls or the last 4 days of an election period. So there's basically those only 3 times that you do not need to have a scope of appointment 48 hours in advance. That doesn't void the need for a scope appointment. You still have to have a scope appointment. Right. It just waives the 48-hour rule with a scope appointment. But anyways, all you can do in an educational event is basically say, if you want me to reach out to you, sign this as permission to contact. That's the only way that you can do any sort of follow-up on an educational event.
Another pro to educational events that I just thought of is these are the kind of events that you can cast a really wide net with. So it's kind of tough with the no follow-up, but you're not getting just people who are on that plan or interested in that plan, like ANOC meetings or something like that. What you're doing is you're bringing in anybody, you're bringing in caretakers. You can, do all those sorts of things. All of your clients, new clients, whoever it may be. I feel like these cast a very wide net, but the tough thing now is that you can't do those follow-up. You can't set follow-up appointments or anything like that. But again, this might just be one of those things where you're hoping brand building.
It's
and
only
name
brand
recognition.
building.
Yeah.
There's only brand
Hopefully
building.
that helps you play the long game and something like that, which I mean, these have shown to do that.
Yeah.
So,
well, let me tell you, if you really like the idea of throwing a wider net, may I introduce you into marketing events?
Woo!
So marketing events is one that I really love. It takes the absolute best out of educational events and leaves all the CMS BS out the door. I define a marketing event as, and there's like, when should you do a marketing event? Oh, it should be.
Hey.
There it is. When do I do a marketing event? Any chance you get. So what would I define as a marketing event? I would define a marketing event as literally everything else. So like if you're wanting to do presentations, doing things like how does Medicare work with diabetes? Top 10 things you didn't know about Medicare. 5 mistakes people make when using their Medicare benefits. As long as in those presentations you do not discuss Part C or Part D, it is not considered educational because you're not discussing a CMS sponsored or CMS regulated plan. So those, and again, we have those seminars made. We have them in our seminars in a box. We have them made ready to go. So I really like doing those types of events. Other types of marketing events are going to be like having a booth at a senior fair, having a booth at a at the mall. I saw one the other day that was at the mall that was ask me about your diabetic supplies, things like that. So there's a lot of ways that you could be doing this, but as long as you do not promote CRD plans, CRD products, keep carrier specific names out of it completely. I love it, because what's the best about that is that, like I have it here on the Pro, this is an opportunity for you to actually build your brand. When you're doing a sales of informal or formal sales event, you are only able to promote that carrier. Here, you can have your name out there, your banner, your brand, your swag, your everything. You don't have to worry about clashing that with the CMS regulations. You're not restricted by compliance. So like we do know with like the both educational and sales events, you can only spend $15 a head. Like if people are going to do like a dinner or something, you can only spend $15 a head on somebody for doing an educational event. If you're doing a marketing event, those same dollar regulations do not apply. There are literally, as long as you're following all the other rules, you're not presenting yourself as a Medicare Alliant or government of Medicare, you're using the correct titles, your name, there really are no rules associated with this.
Yeah.
Keep carrier name, keep carrier plans, keep C&D out of it completely. But there's a lot of opportunities for you to have really meaningful meetings and not have to talk about CRD whatsoever.
So I guess I'm assuming that you can set appointments and stuff here.
You could set appointments. You could take applications for anything other than CRD. You can take like a med step or cancer application. You could dance naked in the street and just throw paper in the air if you wanted to.
As far as CMS is concerned.
Well,
they don't care.
That's probably true. I also probably don't care, because I don't think you're going to be in Columbia doing that. So there literally you could set appointments. You can collect permission to contacts even. You can take applications. You literally can do whatever you want. Just don't talk CRD.
Sweet.
Just curious. Mary, she says, just curious, talking about Part D set and the deductible and increasing from $505 to $545, is that considered an educational event even though you're only discussing CMS standard updates? Absolutely. That would be considered a CMS event or a CMS educational event, because you were discussing Part D in detail. So, yeah, which honestly is going to be, Part D is going to be a huge conversation this year. So I think it might be worth during leading into AEP, especially doing Part D 101 events, because you're going to have clients who are used to getting a $10 premium, $20 premium. Guys, the filed national average is over $65 this year. Last year in 2024, in 2023, it's like $33, $34. So it's like doubling almost. So Part D is going to be a significant conversation this year. So, but if you're going to be discussing the prices and how like the deductible works, the stages of Part D, that's Part D 101. That's an educational event. Doesn't have to be registered, but you do have to abide by the rules, which means that you're pretty limited in your follow-up.
No. Any more questions? We'll be here for a few more minutes.
Just to recap, guys, we want to get you out of here right at 2:30, and it is right at 2:30. Just a quick recap for you. 3 types of events. Sales events, which goes down to formal versus informal. Educational events, those two, such educational and sales, are regulated by CMS. You have to follow their compliance. And the third type that no one's talking about, marketing events, where there are no rules, just don't discuss C&D. My favorite personally is the marketing one. That's your client appreciations, your certain types of seminars that you want to do, hosting margarita night at the senior center. There's a lot of things that you can do with those marketing events that CMS will never be the wiser, because it doesn't concern them whatsoever.
Absolutely.
But if you want to discuss C&D at length, we can help you figure out, should you do an educational, should you do a sales? It all has to do about like, who is your audience and what are your goals?
Absolutely, yeah. And if you've never done an ANOC meeting, I think that would be a really good idea going into this year. But yeah.
Even if you don't have a single person in your downline, it's still worth doing an ANOC event. In fact, you're probably going to get, especially like with United Healthcare, Aetna, a lot of these companies really downsize their sales force as far as like local reps are going. And so they'll probably really like to have agents out there doing the work of what local reps used to do.
That's very true.
So you might get a lot more support doing those than what you used to.
If you mention the amount of MAPD or PDP plans for a particular county, falls under what type?
So if you're mentioning like any type of dollar amounts or names or anything like that, you're getting specific into the plans. That's going to be either a formal or informal sales event, depending on the delivery of that
Mhm.
message. So again, if you're mentioning carrier specific anything, you're going into the sales side of the CMS events. Great question asked by Mary again. That was by David. Thank you, David. The question Mary asked was, does SMS provide ANOC letters, or do we need to reach out to each of the companies? So ANOC letters actually don't get sent to insurance agents. You can get them if you go to like your company portals. You can find copies of the ANOC letters depending on the plan. But ANOC letters typically will go directly to the beneficiaries, will go directly to your clients, usually around the last week of September. So you, again, after October 1st, you can get a copy of them on the carrier websites or call, we don't have access to those, but you should through your carrier website.
Mhm.
But you don't have to distribute those to your clients. Your clients will get that communication directly from their carriers.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is another good reason I think it is to have those meetings, because that's something that kind of cuts you out between the plan and your client. So being able to have these meetings, telling them ahead of time, hey, you're going to get
Information
this
comes
in the
from
mail.
you.
If you have questions, pull me. What?
I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just kind of like being your hype woman back
Sure.
here.
Yeah. If you have questions, reach out to me, and then you as the agent reach out to me, and then
Yeah.
we'll talk about this letter that you get in the mail. It brings you
Exactly.
back into the process, because you don't want them getting too used to doing things on their own. So
Yeah. Well, and then also like keep in mind, if you haven't like read through an ANOC, they can be really confusing, and like no one actually reads through them. They're like there are a
exactly.
ton of pages. There's a lot of the insurance jargon, and just like they just basically go through, this year you paid this year you're gonna pay that. Last
Right.
year you paid this year you're paying that. So like these events do get a lot of traction because people know it's important, but they don't want to go through it line by line.
Right, exactly. And it saves a little bit more of like, I don't know if heartache's the right word, not really, but
Frustration?
frustration is the word I'm
Yeah.
looking for, because you can also go back and show, hey, I did this ANOC event. I was as clear as I possibly could be on this
It's
as well,
great
because
cover your
you never,
butt
yes, exactly.
compliance
So,
reasons. Yeah.
and you're doing it kind of all at once. So that's another reason if you've ever worried about that.
I cannot say enough good things about doing ANOC meetings. Mary says, with the new requirements of saying how many plans we represent, do we need that based on the county of our office? I'm not clear on how to state for MA plans. So that's a really fun new compliance regulation that a lot of people are still kind of figuring out. There's a lot of gray area in that still. So what they're talking about primarily is if you're going to, what the thought behind this is, it's supposed to be in an appointment or a service area that you are referring to. So if you are in an appointment with somebody, you're supposed to say based on their service area, how many plans do you represent based out of how many plans are available to there. So that's not fun to do, but it's easier to understand on a one-on-one appointment. You just look at what county they're in, you find out how many out of how many plans you are there. Where it becomes more tricky is when it becomes like when you're doing your marketing pieces or communication pieces even, because that's a disclaimer that's like how go on all marketing. So if you want to send like a newsletter about AEP, or you want to send a marketing piece to a group of people, but they're across like 4 counties, maybe they're across 4 states, then you what we're suggesting a lot of times is that you total up based on all the service areas that that's going to. Doesn't have to be per each one, but based on all the service areas that could potentially see that advertising, how many plans do you represent out of how many available? Some companies are recommending that you just say like across the United States, or if you're a call center and you sell multiple states, this is how many I have out of how many. Others say like just the entire state's fine. Some companies are saying you have to go service area by service area. Our take is just depends on how many people have the ability to see that piece that you sent out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully that's clear as mud, because it is a lot of gray area. A lot of companies are still trying to figure out like what does that mean as well. CMS gives, here's the hard part, no one asked my opinion, but CMS gives out these rules and regulations, and they leave it up to the carriers to interpret the rules and regulations, and then carriers will come up with different answers.
Yeah.
So then we have our compliance officer Chaylin, as well as our guidance we get from Integrity and their legal team looking over everything to kind of figure out, so what is the final rule that we're going to say. And so that's basically what we've come up with. Where do you register an ANOC event? So David, you register an ANOC event the exact way you register any sales event, formal or informal. There's 2 ways that you can do that. Each carrier will have their own method of doing it. So like United Healthcare, there's 2 ways to do it with United Healthcare. My favorite way is to find out who your local rep is. Tell them that you're going to do it. That way, oftentimes they'll support it, they'll sponsor it, they'll give you marketing dollars,
Absolutely.
and help you with it. The other way is that they actually have a spreadsheet that you go on Jarvis. You have a spreadsheet, you go on there, put in the information, what you want it to do, and you can register it that way. But each carrier will do it a little bit differently. The best way that I can say is find out who your local rep is and have them register it on your behalf.
Absolutely. Back whenever I first started working here, I was an assistant to the onboarding team
Ooh.
4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my jobs, was like getting and like submitting those forms.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Full
Now you're telling
circle.
all the peoples how to do it. You can teach a man to fish, or you could be Sadie and just register them for him.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments, concerns, threats, or promises, let us know. Again, this is a compliance-driven presentation, mainly because some of the major compliance changes people aren't talking about, and that's how events are being run. Really, I think what they can do if you're doing educational events, it really does kind of cut the legs out of making those events profitable. They are
Right.
still great to get your name out there, great to build your brand. So you can still brand yourself, you can still market yourself, market your agency, but you do have to abide by all the CMS regulations, and it's likely they'll get secret shopped.
Yeah.
So I'm team marketing event, unless
Yeah.
you're doing an ANOC or you're doing the DSNP market. And then I'm team formal sales event. And then also informal sales event. Just give us a call.
Sure. Absolutely.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us today. Again, this was recorded. We did remember to push the button. So if you want to watch it back, you're more than welcome to, or you can always call our office. The number here, guys, 1-800-689-2800, or you can always use our live chat feature. We do have live chat on our website, available 9 to 4 Central Standard Time, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 3 on Fridays through the summer. And that is going to be at smsteam.net.
Yes.
Yes. We promised chaos, we delivered chaos, but hopefully we delivered a little clarification as well.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.